So we had looked into this problem, right, where we solved, the CY and not, and we also saw an important graph, which has been used extensively, right, in order to find out the energy and noise level marks, right, with respect to BER, which is bit error rate. So this is an important graph where, if in case I have the bit error value, then I can find out what is E by N naught value, right? So today we're going to start off with the comparison of uplink requirements for FDMA and TDMA. So these are two promising technologies, right, which is used extensively in communications, right? One is done with respect to frequency, and the other one is done with respect to time. Okay. So I've just put a kind of comparison between FDMA and TDMA, right? Towards your left-hand side, you can see the one with FDMA, and towards the right-hand side, you can see, the points which are related to TDMA. So let's take them one by one. With FDMA, the modulated carriers at the input to satellite are retransmitted from the satellite as a combined frequency division multiplex signal. So we will be seeing, mostly on this combination of FDMA and TDMA and trying to come out with a hybrid system. Okay, in some scenarios, FDMA turns out to be good, and in some scenarios, TDMA turns out to be good. So, if we can have a kind of hybrid system which can have both FDMA and TDMA working together, then using switching circuits, it's going to be easy for us to switch between FDMA and TDMA. So that's our idea. Each carrier retains its modulation, which may be analog or digital. For this comparison, digital modulation will be assumed. So there's something called forward error correction. Okay, so this is actually needed in FDMA. The modulation bitrate for each carrier is equal to the input bitrate. Okay, so in the figure, okay, I'll be showing you the figure, okay, which comprises both for FDMA network and the TDMA network. So in the figure, for simplicity, the input bit rate is taken as RB. So we have seen this input bit rate with respect to color televisions, right, is assumed to be the same for each Earth station. The EIRP is also assumed to be the same for each Earth station. So we are taking EIRP, okay, the equivalent isotropic radiated power, and the bit rate to be the same. Okay, so why are we doing this? You'll be seeing that when we solve problems. With TDMA, the uplink bursts that are displaced in time from one another are retransmitted from the satellite as a combined time division multiplex signal. Okay, so these are bursts done with respect to time, okay, not with respect to frequency. The uplink rate is equal to the downlink bit rate in the case as shown in figure P, right? So you can see here the uplink is F0, okay, and the downlink is also F0, right? So I have used a dash there, F0 dash, okay, representing that this is going to be the downlink, and F0, all these are at the same frequencies which are going to be uplink. But here, if you can compare with respect to FDMA, right, that's not the case. The word itself says frequency division multiple axis, right? So which means I am going to use different frequencies, F1, F2, F3, right? And similarly, I'm going to get F1 dash, F2 dash, and F3 dash, right? So compression buffers are needed in order to convert the input rate RB to the transmitted bit RTDMA. So we are using something called compression buffers. Okay, so an important term. Okay, so if asked, okay, then you can say the importance. Okay, if I ask you what are the importance of compression buffers, then you can say they are needed in order to convert the input bit rate, okay, so which is RB, the general term used for the bit rate. Bit rate is nothing but the amount of bits that are being transmitted per second. So it can be kbps or mbps, gbps, right? These days you have different ports, right? For example, you have type C, you have Thunderbolt, right, which is USB version 4, right? So you can say that with USB 2.0, the transfer rate wasn't that good, but then when we moved on to USB 3, right, it drastically increased to 10 um, to 10 Gbps, right, which is huge, which is really huge, and 10 Mbps, right? And then when we moved on to the Thunderbolt, right, so it moved on to 40 Mbps, right? So which is huge, 4 times, right? So there are a lot of changes done with respect to ports, okay, with respect to how these bits are transferred, right? So many other things. Okay, because the TDMA earth stations have to transmit at a higher bit rate compared to FDMA, now we will learn why is this happening, okay, as to why is this happening, why TDMA stations have to transmit at a higher bit rate compared with FDMA. So we will solve few problems, right, and we will try to understand their power requirements, right? So you can take down this formula, which is your carrier to noise ratio is nothing but EB divided by N naught plus R. Okay, so R is nothing but equal to the bit rate of an FDMA uplink and R TDMA, okay, for a TDMA uplink. So RB used for FDMA and RTDMA used for TDMA. So keep these points in mind as we move forward. Okay, fine. So we know that for a given BER, okay, we have a value of EB naught, and that has been shown in this figure. So whatever is the value of EB for BER, the bit error rate, I will have a corresponding value for EB by N naught, right? Hence, assuming that EB by N naught is the same for TDMA and FDMA, okay, so we have this formula, right? This carrier to noise ratio is equal to EARP. You can find these are all for uplinks, right? All these are for uplinks is equal to EARP plus G by T. Most of the time, this G by T values are given in the question, and sometimes directly the losses will be given. You don't have to bifurcate with the antenna misalignment loss, atmospheric absorption, and receiver feeder loss, many other stuff, right? Okay, so assuming that TDMA and FDMA uplinks operate with the same losses and satellite G by T. Okay, so this equation shows that if we increase the C by N ratio, okay, so if I want this ratio to be increased, okay, then it can be achieved only with the majority CIRP. Now, if you can recall, right, we discussed in the previous class that EARP plays a very important role, right? So we almost equate it to EARP. Okay, so when we try to come up with the equation of EARP, right, so that gives us EARP of TDMA minus EARP of FDMA is equal to R TDMA and R. So just make sure that you try to remember this, right? R TDMA, okay, this is for TDMA, and FDMA RB bitrate, right? So bitrate is related to FDMA, and RTDMA is related to ARP of TDMA. So just know this relation, okay, that is going to be helpful. Now, as I mentioned, right, RB is taken as the common bitrate, and if you can see here, the modulation rate RB, okay, F1, F2, F3, all are having different frequencies, and these are small base stations that you can see. So from here, the signals are transmitted, okay, and it reaches the satellite. There are a lot of processing that happens. We will see, what actually is involved, in this block, okay. So in this block, there are many things, that is involved. So we will see them one by one as to what all it involves. Okay. So as of now, try to know the difference, between both of these diagrams, right? So it's pretty simple, right? If if I ask you the differentiation between FDMA and TDMA, you could use the help of these diagrams. Okay, you can draw them and you can say that how frequencies are varying and how it is different, f1 to f3 dash. But here it remains to be the same, right? Fine. So for the same earth station antenna gain, in each case the decibel increase in earth station transmit power for TDMA and FDMA. So when we try to compare, right, power TDMA minus power with respect to FDMA is equal to R TDMA. So the rate is important here, right? The rate. So just you can take down this formula, right? So PTDMA minus PFDMA is equal to the rate in which TDMA signals are transmitted and the bit rate of FDMA signals. Right. So moving forward, we will solve an example. So here you will try to understand, what are going to be the differences between them. So let's say we have a 14 gigahertz uplink, signal, and the transmission losses and margins, total, as I mentioned, the total loss here is going to be about 212 dB. And G by T value is already given, which is 10 dB, and the required uplink EB by N naught is taken as 12 dB, right? So which means I don't need to know the value of BR because it's directly EB by N naught. Sometimes to confuse you, BR value can be given. Okay, so most probably it's going to be about 12 dB alone if it's 10 raised to minus 5, if the bit error rate is about 10 raised to minus 5. So we have two sub problems here. Assuming FDMA operation and an earth station uplink gain is about 46. So capital G is going to be 46. Calculate the earth station transmitter power needed for transmission of a T1 baseband signal. Fine. So the power needed we have to calculate. So which means we will be using this formula here. Okay. If the downlink transmission rate is fixed at 74, okay, so calculate the uplink power required for TDMA operation. So we are kind of having the analysis between FDMA and TDMA both. Okay, so let us come to the solution. So we know that we have previously calculated, and we know that R is equal to 62 dB bits per second. Okay, so I have mentioned this section here so that it's going to be useful for you. As you all know, we're going to use the same textbook. We're using the same textbook. So for further clarification, right, you can make use of this 10.4 section. Now, in the question, directly he has mentioned about 12 dB, which is EB by N naught, right? So we directly put this into the formula. C by N naught is equal to 12, which is EB by N naught plus the rate, right? 62. So which means my carrier to noise ratio is coming about 74 dB. Okay, so the next one. Okay, 74 dB. So the next one that we are going to see here is the calculation of EIRP. Now, EIRP is a combination of G by T, C by N, losses, and K, which is Boltzmann constant. So C by N here, I already have it as 74. G by T was given in the question. Losses, the total number was already given in the question, and 228 here. Okay. So when I sum up, I should be getting about 47.4 dB watts. Okay, 47.4 dB watts. Meanwhile, right, I want you to also verify and check if we are getting those values. Can someone confirm me in the group if we are getting these values? Simple calculation though. Yes, can someone confirm with the values?
Yes.
You're getting? Fine. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you, Kushan. So next, let's move on to another section, okay, where we will be looking into uh, the power, right? So the power required, as you all know, we hit the value of EIRP and the gain, which was 46. So I'm getting about 1.4, okay, dB watts. Now the B question was asking us about with respect to TDMA and what changes I have to do in case I have to work with TDMA signals. So and it was told that from 74 instead of 62. So 74 minus 62 is going to give me about 12 dB, right? So if you can just go back to the right, so they want it to be at 74 dB per second, right? So we're going to get the difference, and it's going to be about 12 dB. And all the other factors we are keeping constant. For example, G by T, losses, of course, Boltzmann constant. And we find out that, and we calculate EIRP, right? So we find out that P gives me about 13.4 dB watts. So you can see that this is about 1.3, and here I'm getting about 13.4. So which means your FDMA is much better, right? FDMA is much better with regards to power consumption, right? Not TDMA. So I have kind of summarized them here, right? So you can just have a look at them. So if in case I'm using a small satellites, right? So it's better to go with FDMA because it's less power consuming, and but there is one added advantage with respect to TDMA, right? TDMA permits more efficient use of the transponder by eliminating the need for backoff. Now we know what is a backoff. Backoff is nothing but the concept where I try to get it into the saturation region so that I have constant, I don't have two bifurcations happening after the saturation point, right? So I reduce the values of input and thereby the output also gets reduced. So in total, this is referred to as backoff. So this suggests that we can probably have an hybrid system, as I was mentioning in the start, right, where some of the sections work with FDMA and the other sections work with your TDMA. So hybrid system in which FDMA is the uplink mode of operation, okay, and we need to have a converted signal to a time division multiplexed format before being amplified by the traveling wave tube amplifier. So in this way, we can make use of, we can reap the advantages of both FDMA and TDMA together. Okay, so such a hybrid mode of operation would require the use of signal processing. So we will have to use a lot of coding, encoding, processing. Okay, so we will see them one by one. So what kind of signal processing are needed for FDMA and your TDMA operation, right? So the first type, that we'll be looking into is something called customer premises services. Before that, we'll just look into a few more points. For small Earth stations carrying digital signals at relatively low data rates, there is an advantage to be gained in terms of Earth station power requirements by FDMA. So power is a very important factor, right? So we want less power to be consumed as much as possible. So FDMA gives us an upper hand compared to TDMA. On the other hand, TDMA signals make more efficient use, as we saw, right? And multiplexed digital transmission will be used most likely in the T1 rate. This bit rate provides for most popular services such as voice, data, video conferencing, but specifically excludes standard television signals, right? So if you want to have communication, right, for example, your cellular networks, right, which is best suited for voice, data, as well as video conferencing, isn't it? So so that is going to be the best for telephone services. But then compared, it's not going to help us with the high data rate requirement as seen for televisions. Okay, customer premises services, which is also called as CPS, is an ideal candidate for FDMA TDMA mode of operation. Okay, so which we'll be seeing in the upcoming section. So CPS is one important factor. Okay, so to operate in this mode, it requires the use of signal processing, as I mentioned, right? And we use FDMA for uplink and TDMA for downlink. Please note down that point. Okay, so FDMA links are converted to the TDM format for retransmission on the downlink. Okay, it should also be noted that the use of this signal processing transponders decouples the uplink from the downlink. Okay, so there's going to be couplers, decouplers, okay, where all the signal processing happens. This is important because it allows the performance of each link to be optimized independently. Fine. Several signal processing methods have been proposed. One conventional way I'm going to show you in the next. Okay, fine. This is generally used type. Okay, where we can have a group type of detectors, or we can have separately like filters, then intermediate frequency amplifiers and detectors. Okay, so if I in case have this group signal processing, that means it will have a combination of all of these, just filters and amplifiers. So combinedly it will be here, and then detectors are separate, baseband, PSK modulator. Okay, all this remains to be the same. Okay, so at the first you have frequency filters, right? And next you have IF, okay, which is intermediate frequency amplifiers. Then you have detectors. Okay, so this is where all your signals are taken and the conversions are happening. Okay, so let me just show you that. So here the individual uplink carriers of the satellite are selected by frequency filters, right? So filters are there, and I'll be selecting the uplink frequencies based on this filters. So I'm going to design the filter, and the filter will allow only that is required to be passed through. The baseband signals are then combined in the baseband processor, where they are converted to a TDM format. Okay, so which means we are going to use a TDM format for the downlink. More than one downlink carrier may be provided, but only one is shown for simplicity. The advantages of conventional approach are those of excessive size, weight, power consumption, since the circuitry must be duplicated for each input carrier. Okay, so only one signal is taken just for showing, making it more simple, right? So you can see here that it has a combination of filters and amplifiers. Right. Let's move on. The disadvantages associated with processing each carrier signals can be avoided by means of group processing. So as I mentioned here, you have separate blocks which deals only with filters, and here which deals only with amplification, especially the IF signal amplification. So if you do not want separate things to happen, you can combine them, put them in a group signal processor. So this is where all the conversion happens, where for your uplink you're going to use FDMA, and for your downlink you're going to use TDMA. So this signal processor plays an important role. Okay, so in order to do that, then we need a proper IC. Okay, very high speed integrated circuits for this type of group processor. The other approach, if I have to use an analog type, then I'll have to use SAW, okay, surface acoustic wave Fourier transform. Okay, so that is one alternative if I do not have the digital mode of operation. Okay, but at the time, when this literature was written, okay, there was not much of developments in the field of VLSI. Okay, but then these days you have many advancements that have happened with VLSI. Hence, it makes us easy for getting this group signal processor um, built and executed. Okay, fine. Now, the last topic for us with respect to satellite communications is going to be satellite switched TDMA. Now, what is this satellite switched TDMA? As I mentioned, right, how this switching happens and how the signal processing happens, how are the antennas used, how are antennas getting connected from one to another, right? All these are shown. So the efficient utilization of satellites in GSO can be achieved through the use of antenna spot beams. Now we have seen that antennas are capable of giving us broad beams. Okay, if you can remember the concept with respect to ORBCOMM, right? We have seen how the beam width can be changed from 400 kilometers to few kilometers, right? So further improvements can be realized by switching the antenna interconnections with TDMA frame rate. Okay, so this is nothing but called as SS, okay, which is satellite switched TDMA. So in order to do this, we need a crossbar switch. We need a switching network, which helps us to go about with this process. So I'll be showing you a figure here, right? So in which, let us call this as beam A, okay, and the other one as beam B and beam C, right? So we have a small signal that has been passed through, okay, the TTNC, telemetry tracking and command. So signal passes through the distribution control 3x3 switch matrix, okay, 3x3 switch matrix. So input and output. So you have three types of beams, okay, and three modes, okay. So here, I have just used ABC beams, okay, inputs, but then there can be different combinations. So here I have mentioned about 6 combinations, right? So let us say input is A, then in mode 1, if I'm using mode 1, okay, then signal A is going to come here, here, and even in mode 2, I'm going to get signal A, okay. And if I'm in input B, so B will be accessible in mode 1, okay, and accessible in mode 6. So which means, let's say for example, if I want signal B, then I can have an input as A, but still access signal B being in mode 3 and mode 5. Okay, so that's the specialty of this kind of structure switching with your spot beams. Okay, so a 3x3 satellite switch matrix is shown. This is the key component in which it permits the antenna interconnections. Okay, so how is this 3x3 switch matrix? Okay, so this is how it is. So you're getting your 14 gigahertz, which means the uplink. So you have your base station here, you're receiving the signal. Once the signal enters, right, all this down conversion happens, and then it gets into the switch matrix. And after this, your up conversion is happening, then the downlink. So from here, I'm going to receive signals down to my base station. So you can say that it's 14/12, which means this is a KU band signal, right? Okay, so when 3 beams are used, okay, 6 modes would be required for full connectivity. So which means it is like 3 into 2 into 1, 3 factorial, right? Suppose I'm having n beams, then it's going to be n factorial, okay, right? For full interconnectivity means that signal carried in each beam are transferred to each of other beams at some other time. So as I told you, right, if I want to access some other signals, right, it may not be necessary that my input should be, in order to access B, my input should not, or may not be necessarily B. But then with input A also, okay, I can access signals B in mode 5 and 3. Okay. Because of beam isolation, one frequency can be used for all uplink, which is about 14, and for downlink we're using 12, so which means it's KU band. A mode pattern is a repetitive sequence of satellite switch modes, also referred to as SS. Okay, so we have seen this. The frames need not be identical since there is some redundancy between nodes. For example, right, as I told you, in beam A, okay, so this can interconnect with beam B. Okay, so even though the input is beam A, I can have beam B accessed in modes 3 and 5. Okay, so thus I can make sure that all modes, I should not waste power by utilizing all the modes just for accessing signal B, right? So to simplify the satellite switch design, the switching is carried out at intermediate frequency that is common to uplinks and downlinks. So I will show you a small basic diagram, okay, in which you can see how this 3x3 switching matrix is used, right? So you can see here a small diagram which has the uplinks as I mentioned previously. Okay, so the basic types of switch matrix are crossbar switch. Okay, maybe you would have studied in your telecommunication and switching. Okay, previously there used to be these crossbar switches. Okay, so this switch matrix or crossbar matrix are rearrangeable network, so which means we can configure it. How does it look? So this is how it looks, right? So I have inputs A, B, C, and then outputs A, B, C. So I can configure them, right? So these are just connecting those lines. Okay, you have one junction here, one point here. So these are just like switches. So here the switch is open, here the switch is closed, right? So here you can see that input B is connected to the broadcast mode. The A line disconnected, C line disconnected, only the B line is connected. Okay, so this is how your crossbar switch looks. Okay, so the broadcast mode with rearrangeable network type switch is more complex, and this can be a deciding factor in favor of crossbar matrix. Okay, so we have seen a 3x3 crossbar matrix. Okay, so as the number of inputs and all those increases, right, it's going to get more complex. We can also use the switching elements such as diodes, okay, FETs. Some of the countries, probably in Europe, okay, they had used diodes for the purpose of switching. Okay, I will show you that. So here you can see how traffic is rerouted. Okay, so you saw how this crossbar switch looks. Okay, and this crossbar switch is inside this block that you see, right? And now I'll show you another diagram where traffic is maintained, how traffic is maintained, how switching happens between from one line to another line. Now usually as I've mentioned in our classes, right, if there are more number of calls on a line, okay, so maybe your call may not get connected. Okay, you might get an error message on the IUR stating that that the lines are busy, please try after some time. Okay, if all the lines are engaged. Okay, sometimes what is going to happen, if a person has occupied the channel or the line for about an hour or two, okay, based on each operator, it will be disconnected using a timer that is set by the operator, right, the maximum time. And once that the channel becomes free, right, so that has been allocated to a new caller, right? So how is this rerouting done? Okay, the switch is controlled from ground station, and the switching sequence of the frame is labeled with subscript 1. Okay, so this I've shown in the lower part of the figure, and you can say that U, V, W are all different ground stations, and they are accessing the separate antennas, okay, having downlink beams X, Y, Z. Okay, so these are your, you know, UVW. Okay, these are your ground stations, right? X, Y, and Z are all your beams. Okay, this is your switching control. Here you see the 3x3 switch matrix, the one which I showed, in which A and C were disconnected and B was connected, right? So that's the same switching matrix here, right? And you can see how it is connected, right? The same thing here. So I have ZU1, okay, so which means beam Z and U both are connected. Okay, so I get ZU1, then YU1, okay, beam YU1. Okay, so the subscript one you're seeing here, so that is with respect to output. Okay, so ground stations are UVW, and it's accessing different downlink signals XYZ. The switch is controlled by a ground station, and after the switching sequence we are adding one, which is the subscript. Okay, so this is how, this the switching, so how they work in tandem, right? The matrix, the beams, the ground stations, switching control. Okay, all of these, fine. As I was mentioning, right, this is one such configuration that was used in the European countries, right, which is a 4x4, okay, matrix, which was used by the European Olympus satellite. Okay, so this arrangement is derived from the crossbar matrix. So the same crossbar matrix, they have enhanced it, and it permits broadcast mode operation, but does not allow more than one input to be connected to the output. So that is one disadvantage, but then you have more, matrix. The diodes are used for switching elements. You can see here, right? So the diodes, as we know, we can use it as forward and reverse bias. Forward bias is connected, and reverse bias totally shuts it down, right? So diodes are used as switching elements, and since there was technology trying to creep in, right? So as I was mentioning, switching elements can be a diode, can be an FET. So as there were advancements happening in the field of VLSI, right, so they were able to replace these switching elements, okay, to a more reliable one. So diodes are used as switching elements, and the diode quads are used, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, right? This section, diode quads are used, and which provide redundancy against diode failure. So I'm using a small resistor here, 50 ohm resistor between them. Okay, so that if one set of the diode is gone, then probably I can use the other one. But of course it's a complex structure, right? And replacing becomes a problem. It is clear that satellite switch TDMA adds to the complexity. So which means if I'm using an FDMA, just go with FDMA, right? If you want to have a hybrid structure using both, your TDMA and FDMA, the structure is going to be more complex. Okay, more complex is more complexities, more problems, and less reliable system. Okay, complexity to the onboard equipment and to the synchronization requirements. So use of multiple antenna beams can also be used, which is space division, multiple axis, in which they are spaced apart. Both beam switching and the use of phased adaptive arrays have been studied for mobile applications. So for your further reading, right, I just want you to refer section 6.18, okay, in which a different study is done, okay, for mobile applications. Okay, so that's about it about the earth stations. Okay, so we have seen different configurations. We have seen what is a switch matrix. Okay, and we have seen crossbars, right? How it works. Okay, so many other complex things were also discussed. So just go through the problems, right? Problems will help us understand the differences between TDMA, FDMA, and which is actually more um, helpful in understanding the concepts. Okay.